What if creativity is less to do with talent and is more to do with how you think? In this video, I want to share with you how 3 simple words and 4 straight lines can help you break through your current limitations and be more creative. And that's despite how lacking in ability you might currently feel. We'll start with a really simple exercise, and for that you'll need to get yourself a piece of paper and something to write with. On your paper, draw 9 dots in a 3x3 grid. Then, without taking your pen off of the paper, connect all the dots using 4 consecutive straight lines. Pause the video for a few minutes and actually give this a go. Did you manage it? Most people do this kind of thing. Or this kind of thing. And after a few more failed attempts, they often give up and say it's impossible, which it isn't. Here's how you do it. Now you've seen a solution to it, you might think that I was cheating, but honestly I'm not. Because it's not so much the limitation of 4 lines and 9 dots that restricts us, it's our perception of them that does that. And in order to solve the puzzle, we have to borrow the really popular metaphor and think outside of the box. And that's entirely my point. Sometimes we feel as though we can't engage with a particular creative act, whatever that might be, because of these imaginary boundaries that we've boxed ourselves into. And to be honest, it's imagination is where this battle is won and lost. And even if you didn't solve the puzzle, I've got some good news for you in terms of that, because you actually have proven that your imagination is working well because you perceived a limitation on that grid that wasn't actually there. So you imagine that, and that proves that your imagination's up and running. But now we've established that there are invisible walls and invisible boundaries that we need to break through. How on earth do we do that? I've discovered 3 little words that, when used in the right places, have got a lot of power to help us carry on our thinking beyond the grid that we've established for ourselves. Let's take, for example, if you wanted to be a painter but you doubted seriously that you could. I'd imagine that your internal dialogue and your self-talk, you would say such things to yourself as, I could never be a painter. This internal dialogue builds and reinforces those walls of impossibility that we've built inside us, and obviously that isn't what we want at all. So let's add another word to our sentence, and this word helps us take our thinking outside of that grid that we've established, and it's the word unless. Unless. So you might say, I could never be a painter unless I buy paints and a brush, or I make some marks on a piece of paper or canvas, or I practice, or I risk making some terrible art. But now at this point, you have a choice. And your choice is to either take action, no matter how small that action might be, or just choose to stay stuck in your box of impossibility. So on to the other 2 words. Let's suppose that you wanted to be a photographer, but you had no equipment. You might find yourself saying such things as, well, I'd love to be a photographer, but I don't have a camera. And there's an air of finality about that, isn't there? Kind of a resignation to it never happening. So let's mess with the words in that sentence a little bit, and let's take out the word but and put in the word and see what difference that makes. So let's change our sentence from, I'd like to be a photographer, but I don't have a camera, to being, I'd like to be a photographer and I don't have a camera. And then we'll add the word so to the end. That's our 3rd word, which allows our thinking to continue. So you might continue by saying, so I need to buy one, or so I need to borrow one, or so I need to steal one. Well, maybe not the last one, but you get the idea. This approach changes the complexion of what we're saying, and it leads us to start looking at ways to resolve the circumstance that we're facing rather than resigning ourselves to it being a permanent fixture. And there's a wisdom quote from the Bible that speaks to this kind of thing that I particularly love. And it says, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." It's our deepest held beliefs that dictate the choices we'll make and the things we'll achieve and ultimately who we'll become. So let me ask you a question. Are you telling yourself a story? And is it a story that's holding you captive behind imaginary, invisible walls of restriction? How might you retell that story? How might you reword it so that you can break free from that grid? Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.